freedom. So ROX mixing it up. The Corki may be what they want for a first pick right here.
I thought Hachani, we noticed it in the replays, had certainly one of his off games. Now, he hasn't had many missteps this season, but despite the fact they have a support chomping at the bit to play, Ignar was one of the lone bright spots of Incredible Miracle last season. Hachani returns his place for Game 2.
Well, we don't know really what they need. Obviously, we know that Peekaboo was a major voice in the shot calling alongside Score, so if Hachani is filling in that gap, then it may be more valuable to have him than perhaps a player that performs a little better mechanically. So Lux and Lulu, L champions banned out here by the Tigers. And are we going to see the Corki ban this time is the major question. Kalista and Corki banned last time around in Italy.
On the red side, maybe it's the return of the Fiora that we were so surprised made it through picks and bans in Game 1.
Especially with these two players, Smeb and Sunday. A Fiora making it through a draft seems almost inconceivable, especially when the Quinn, the main counter that teams have been using, was banned.
Yeah, the only other champions that kind of do decently in lane, Tom Kench probably does fine, just given his tankiness. Kennen has a pretty good laning phase and in general can get away with his suite of CC, depending, of course, on the riposte timing. But those two are the only other champions that really can hold a candle to the lane dominance that is Fiora. In the late game, at least.
Well, GP up. That's going to be a fast grab for the Tigers. Kalista still an option here.
I think you take Fiora early and say, all right, if you're going to play Gangplank, it's not going to be in the top lane, and just deny that, because you do not pick Gangplank into Fiora.
I think you take Kalista Fiora here, absolutely. They banned the Kalista, one of Prey's more dangerous champions in the last game, and so you pretty much, if this is going to be your strategy, are opting into this.
And let's return to this. You take the Fiora, suddenly Gangplank top is really not a thing. You cannot opt into the matchup against Fiora. And from there on, you force Gangplank in the mid lane. Gangplank doesn't have a lot of lane pressure. We saw Coco just wailing away on a mid lane Gangplank with Corki a couple of days ago, and suddenly your pressure game for KT has already got a huge kickstart just from picks and bans. I'd be surprised to see them go with the Mundo priority out of nowhere.
Yeah, but they may go for an Elise, and they're going to take that with Lucian, actually. So again, KT really liking the early wave clear from Lucian. Lucian obviously a strong pick right now, but no one prioritizing that pick as highly as KT does. And they grab Elise over Rek'Sai. Worth noting that KT has yet to play a Rek'Sai game this season, so this is going to be Score's fourth game on Elise. So clearly they like that pick better.
But Alistar and Kalista both available. Prey has been defaulting to Kalista where possible, so we expect to see him pick it up here. The Alistar Gorilla just did so much work on it. There's, of course, no need to rush the pick, but Kalista Alistar sounds like pretty much the perfect second round for the ROX Tigers.
That would make 4 out of 4 games on Alistar this season for Gorilla, and that's what it's going to be. Why take it away when he performs on it every game? This time, however, the Kindred will be in Peanut's hands.
Score's going to have to be worried, because every time we see a Kindred, we see early invades onto the Elise blue buff. We've seen so many times that Elise have been killed at their blue. I guess it would have to be red depending on where the starts come through. It's a mirror of where we've seen this Kindred versus Elise matchup, but still, early dueling potential from the Kindred.
Famously, Bengi sacrificing the first blood right at
Bengi.
level 2 in a 1v1. But yes, pathing from Kindred can be devastating to an Elise early. And Lissandra, the lock, alongside Shen, which I imagine will be played support by Hachani. That is one of his preferred support picks.
It's a good pick into the Alistar. You don't have to worry about the laning phase. You can just dash away if any headbutt Polv comes in. The Lissandra's a spicy one. Will it be a top lane Lissandra? Because that would really invite the Gangplank matchup.
Fly, I'm sure, can play it in the mid lane, and that means that we're going to see full lanes from the ROX Tigers before KT is forced to reveal their hand. Tom Kench here with GP, Kindred, and Ezreal would be pretty great for some better front line and good saving potential.
Very physical damage, heavy comp being mulled over by the ROX Tigers, but worth noting that between the blue Ezreal magic damage and, of course, Thunderlords and some incidental damage from the likes of the Tahm Kench. There still is a smattering of magical damage.
Yeah. And Prey on the Ezreal. And, you know, for the most part, in leagues around the world, we haven't seen very successful Ezreal play. Blue Ezreal just seems like it takes too long to scale in the current meta, but Prey really did a great job on it in the last game. Started out 3-0-4. And now the Fiora, this is your time to shine someday.
This is the someday carry performance on a platter in a great matchup for the Fiora. I'd be super surprised to see them pivot away from it.
I think you definitely go for a 1-3-1 right here. You have the Shen ultimate too for another global. If you can pull off a split push, you're going to be in a really excellent situation. But, of course, ROX Tigers probably going to be using double teleport too, but they should have a stronger 1-3-1 with the Fiora.
The only reason to pick Nara's engaged, obviously you could have potential for amazing wombo engages between Lissandra, Nara, and of course the Elise and Shen duo.
Well, you have a lot of harassment options in
Sure.
lane 2 against the Tahm Kench. Really no way that Tahm Kench can effectively trade, so they may just try and take it for the laning phase, but of course Fiora not going to have too many troubles against Tahm Kench either, so someday really changing up. After 3 games of Fiora and 1 game of Gangplank to start this season, a little underwhelming. Tahm Kench and Gnar going back to some tanks tonight for KT and not sticking with their scaling split push strategy seemingly at all.
Yeah, so of course, neglected to mention that because we saw the Tahm Kench lock in, there was no potential for the Fiora Gangplank top. That was off the table. Gangplank mid, specifically here, the big question is, can Score and Fly have a rebound game? They have Lissandra Elise as a mid lane jungle skirmishing duo against Gangplank Kindred. So if Kindred gets away with her shenanigans despite having such a pressure discrepancy in the early game between Lissandra and Gangplank, that's a big issue for KT. They should be playing around massive pressure advantage in mid.
Yeah, and ROX is going to very much want to lane swap out of this situation, help this Ezreal scale like we saw them in the last game, start stacking that tier early, because having standard lanes, not great for their Tahm Kench or their Ezreal.
All 3 lanes, actually.
Yeah.
Pressure going to be well on the side of KT if we see standard lanes. Expect fireworks in the early game to see some of those deep wards.
Well, we're going to start game number 2, ROX Tigers versus KT Rolster. Can the Tigers get a sweep? What do they want to rule, Papa Smithy?
We're never going to know.
Everybody wants to rule the insert blank here. All right, KT looking to rebound from a close first game, stretched out to 40 minutes, made some overextensions, and they let the Alistair through once again. So Gorilla gets 4 games in a row to start off his season on this pick.
And the only way for the ROX Tigers to get through the early game, we've talked about lane swaps, just on a simple level, obviously, Ezreal wants to swap out of this Lucian Shen lane. But let's just take the flow-on effect of a successful lane swap. If we see a repeat of the previous game, Ezreal can be swapped into top for an off-lane 1v1 matchup, allowing Gorilla to do Gorilla things, pick up Moby Boots, roam, and create the pressure that innately these lanes lack. You will see Gnar pushing in Tahm Kench. Lissandra has complete control over Gangplank, and 2v2, Lucian Shen wins every day of the week. It's on Gorilla once again to create the pressure that ROX Tigers did not draft for.
And that's the issue. If they play like they did in the lane swap in the last game where they leave Prey alone, certainly they turned around the gank with the Twisted Fate up there. That's not going to be an option this game if Lissandra and Gangplank both show up early. So Prey has to be super careful. They are going to get swapped on as we see KT with their duo in the bottom side. And this means, too, that if they try and freeze it, like they did when the first turret went down, that the pressure coming in from KT might be overwhelming, and they could trade some stacks on a tier for a turret, which be quite painful for the Tigers.
Super interested to see how level 1s evolve as the season goes on, as that's actually a really good trade for Kuroda's popping the Corrupting Potion and having a big potion advantage over Fly. But I just have to wonder, I just feel that the early game jungle fall is so unpredictable. Teams get away with blind swaps more than they should do. Of course, that's a lot to do with timer changes and just how the game is flowing right now. But I can't see this being the reality come playoff time.
Yeah, something's got to give here. We also have seen, you alluded to level 1s earlier, but those very passive level 1s, we rarely see deep wards coming in anymore. So Prey and Gorilla starting to push up as we see KT mirroring that in the bottom side of the map. And this will be Chani rejoining his AD carry. We'll see, of course, Someday and Smeb also walking up there to get some turret damage down. So standard as standard could be so far. But the real question is, what is Prey going to do after this turret goes down? Because they did get an advantage because of the TF in that situation last game, but normally you would not get that advantage.
And look, Gangplank has non-committal global assistance. Obviously, it's not a Twisted Fate Destiny, but he can stay in lane and also throw out a lot of damage. Peanut's sniffing around mid, but Fly's still at half health. One of the reasons that they're doing this, of course, we talked about how we expected Lissandra to have a big pressure advantage. That level 1 chunk, Fly has no potions and is sitting around half health. He is in a bit of a dodgy position, just given how the level 1 trading went with Kuro.
Yeah, certainly is. Prey here with Smeb, both top laners. Actually, interesting. So that was a interesting choice, canceling that recall just to get some more damage. Prey and Smeb also sharing gold on that tier 1 turret.
I believe it was just they didn't have enough auto attack damage and just how the minions would have broken. He just had to call in the AD carry for one last salvo of damage. So doesn't get the selfish gold, but still necessary for the reverse push.
So setups for both top laners here, of course. Smeb is going to be quite delighted to see that minion wave pushing back towards him. Same thing with Someday. Fly has the mana. Kuro running short on that resource, and there is Hachani lurking in the topside brush. Lots of pings going down, and the crab looks like it will catch Hachani as he walks back up into lane.
Look who's going bottom to get his 1v1 matchup. It's Prey once again. Tier into just stacking up the tier. No pressure, don't have to deal with the Lucian trading. This is the lane assignment that we saw last game, and they get it once again, ROX Tigers.
Yeah, interesting that we do see this twice in a row. So they have definitely practiced specifically for a blue build Ezreal. And look at KT's reaction. They're actually going to go for a very fast Rift Herald to try and increase pressure and therefore punish Prey for freezing deep and try and take a turret on the top side as a response. So very interesting adaptation. Why did Score take the buff? No. Give it to Hachani.
Hachani gets nothing.
I thought for sure they would be going over so they could apply pressure to the top side.
Hey, who's to say that Elise doesn't walk into lane NASA style and just try and AoE down waves? It's possible.
Well, Score's going bottom side, so I suppose it isn't possible, actually. Instead, Someday just going to play very aggressively.
I like how the Rift Herald gives you literally nothing at dealing with these jungle mobs at all.
Wow, that is one of the more confusing Rift Heralds I have seen taken. I thought for sure Hachani would get it, walk back in there, and at least get some more damage on top. But nope. Herald down, and that'll be Score wandering around. I guess he just wanted to look purple.
Lulu approves.
Score going to walk right by a pink board in the river without checking it. They know what's going on here. Kuro going to get engaged on Fly, actually. Going to pop his ult on himself in response to the GP, but there's Gorilla. Forces the flash. Smeb also joining the rest of his team, courtesy of a TP. Hachani now trying to zone out. They're not going to catch Lissandra, but a very good read by the Tigers, turning the gank. But they do blow a teleport for it, and the GP ultimate. So that's going to be a lot of pressure relief. Meanwhile, Arrow gets some free time with the top lane tower.
Not a brush that Gorilla or Peanut want to face check. One thing I want to say, though, Peanut in position for a really smart counter gank. Nice to see the communication and the pathing from Peanut already levels ahead of anything we saw from him on Najin.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't look anywhere near as reckless as he used to in past seasons. KT now decides that
all the buffs.
You're going to use their pressure advantage and the Rift Herald buff on the Dragon. Good job.
Shen support, of course, very, very tanky. Has at least 1 point in the W. Can just tank up the damage. Between Elise and Shen, they're so tanky. And then, of course,
here we go. Peanut going to come back in. Fly going to eat out. And there's the death. Wolf gets the first blood. Combined with Kuro. Looks like it was actually a passive tick. I may have finished that off as Wolf went in for the kill.
It's concerning for KT. The pressure around mid is what they picked themselves for. But Peanut, both defensively and offensively, has been all over Fly. And now Gangplank actually has the snowball advantage in lane.
Yeah, very surprising. Goes back, of course, for his first buy and did pick up that Sheen. So choosing to do more damage in this lane, not actually getting an early Ruby Crystal. Most of the time you see GP as he builds into Trinity Force in mid lane, take the Ruby Crystal and the Sapphire Crystal and play defensively. Not this time.
You haven't been watching some of these games. Obviously these players have been watching the LPL, as you point out, the, of course, Hex Drinker for a bit of defensive choice from the Gangplank. But in the LPL, we saw a top lane Gangplank go Sapphire Crystal start into Cull.
I watched that game.
they took away the Poppy. They haven't quite gone for the greed Gangplank.
So tell me, did that Gangplank win the game, Papa Smithy?
I don't believe he did.
No, he did not.
But he got a lot of cool gold. Cull is the best, worst item ever.
So terrible.
I know, but if you get the 100 stacks.
No, Papa Smithy. Just no.
Well, you lose the game before you get the 100 stacks,
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
That's the reality of Cull. It does as advertised. It culls you right out of the game. It culls the good players from the bad players.
Useful in that way.
It is quite useful.
But will we see, I mean, the question is, though, like, Avarice Blade was seen as a noob trap and then became the cornerstone of most AD carry builds much, much later after its introduction. There's probably a world where Cull becomes relevant.
With buffs, sure.
Okay. Avarice Blade, I believe, got 1 extra GP10 as a buff at some point during his livelihood. +2 to +3.
Avarice Blade also builds into things.
Cull builds into selling it for something else?
Crucially, Avarice Blade builds into other
It
things.
did, okay. I forgot about that. Maybe Cull will build into things.
Maybe it will, Papa Smithy. Maybe it will. That would be probably the biggest improvement they could give it. But KT starting to chip away at this tower, getting those big advantages that they did lose at least a little bit in the mid lane. Fly still just trying to wave clear as best he can. Score comes through with the buff, but not actually going to see the ward right there. He gets seen, and there's the GP ultimate. Well timed, not only to keep the turret up, but to dissuade any dive. Someday now finds Peanut in the river. And that's going to be a 3-stack. Someday's getting very close to Meganar. Peanut doesn't want to fight this. I don't know what he's doing, and he's just going to get jumped on by Someday. They're going to get the kill maybe with the Ignite.
It's not going to kill him.
And it's not going to be enough. Meanwhile, Score gets found out in the top side. Kuro is here, and Hachani, the last victim, left alone, flashless in the enemy jungle, and Prey comes through with the true shot barrage, finishes off Someday as he recalls under his turret. His eyes on the shop, no doubt.
Prey, this is his Ezreal. He is the premier Korean Ezreal player in Champions, especially now that Deft is left.
Hey, there's still Faker, come on.
Okay. If he was stealing a buff, it'd be all about Faker.
Score and trying to punish Smeb right here. TP coming back, and that will be canceled in the end. Kuro has to use a summoner spelling, but guess who's here? It's Someday. Hopping forward, does get the proc, but is he going to burn through the health? The answer is probably. Once this shield is slowly destroyed, Someday barely lives.
Kindred's
but it's
on the chase.
Kindred coming around, but Score and Someday are here, and it's just Peanut. And there is Someday with a Meganar. Cocoon goes through. Peanut a little in a tough place, and here comes Someday. Rock thrown, smashed into the ground. Kindred, Gorilla's here with a 3-man knockup, and a true shot barrage goes past, but it just can't finish up. Peanut again caught out by the KT lineup.
But it was just a hair's breadth away from the Prey triple kill there if that heal hadn't come through. It's actually going to be a second Rift Herald. Prey picks up the bot lane turret, but across the map, ROX losing pressure slowly.
All right, well, let's give it to Score again.
Well, Shiny doesn't want it, clearly. Let's watch here. All right. Take the buff.
No!
Score's like, thank you.
It's like, if I can't have blue, I'm taking this.
Back to the jungle.
With his sweet purple shield. Great times. Well, top lane turret falls, leaves us very close at 12 minutes into this game that has featured quite a bit of action for a lane swap.
Big factor though, Kuro in a bad matchup in the mid lane. With the help from Peanut, a lot of babysitting in the first 10 minutes. He's actually ahead in CS and 2-0 up. The effective goal difference, remember, Gangbang, of course, gets all the extra goal from Parlay. The goal difference between him and Fly is going to be already quite big.
Yeah, it is. Someday, too, has a couple of kills, but has fallen behind when it comes to farm, surprisingly, as the Gnar. They've been leaning against each other for quite some time now. He'll catch up after the next couple of waves.
There's a lot of kill involvement, though, at 2-1 and 2, so
definitely.
In
fact, 100% kill participation.
Wow, that's the most possible.
That is the most possible. There aren't more percents than 100.
But I gave 110% in my cast today, Monty.
You can't. You lie.
All right.
And also never say that.
That's fair. I think I lost points.
That's
for that one.
that's the worst cliche in the world, and there are a lot of terrible cliches.
But everyone gave 110% today.
You can't do that. I'm sorry.
I'm taking it 1 week at a time.
I'm only giving about 80% right now, in fact. All right.
Why are you tanking?
KT going to be slowed up there by the Iceborne Gauntlet once again. Prey really opting for that item very early on.
Achani pink ward's nothing.
That's how you do. So, yeah, a lot of these blue build Ezreals we see not rushing the Iceborne and instead trying to stack up for the Muramana faster. There's an engagement. Smeb comes from the flank, but he gets taunted. Achani starts to try and delay him. Does get eaten, spit back out. And that'll be a kill for the Tigers as they get one on the hard engage. A plethora of wards popped over the wall.
With the changes to the cooldown reduction mechanic from the Q, it's been evolved into the Iceborne Gauntlet Rush. It allows you to control minion waves well. The poke is there. I mean, just the rush for the Muramana, it feels like people are happy to delay that to the 25, 30-minute mark.
I think it's just such a good tool for the mid-game here and just stalling out KT and preventing their engages. So why not take it early? You're going to get the Muramana eventually.
Exactly. The AD just doesn't really mean much from Ezreal. His minion wave control, or lack thereof, outside of Ultimate has always been the pitfall of him as a champion. It was only when Runeglaive was introduced that finally mid-lane Ezreal had wave control. But Iceborne Gauntlet Rush, you can just watch these minion waves. They die consistently.
Prey takes a culling to the face. Out of mana right now, but Kuro has begun some split-pushing antics in the bottom side. They do have this turret somewhat protected right now, but Grace here, no True Shot Barrage, not much wave clear left over without the GP in mid lane.
Gangplank ult is down, so don't have the emergency wave clear that provides. Gangplank, Trinity Force Hex Drinker. Basically, this is around the Trinity Force timing, maybe a little bit fast, but the snowball Hex Drinker from the kills means that suddenly the 1v1 kill between the oranges and the Hex Drinker shield, almost impossible, and that's magic resist against both Score and Fly when it comes to any sort of skirmish around the mid lane.
Yeah, and 15 minutes, like you're saying, is definitely the benchmark for a Trinity Force in a solo lane. And so having that, like you're saying, and the Hex Drinker really shows the advantage that he's been able to build in the game. And especially with the extra gold that he's getting as a result of his parlay, he is in a very good place.
Just worry about the late game team fights where Gnar, Elise, Lissandra, Lucian, all these champions are mid-range to short-range champions opting into Gangplank barrels. They're going to be impressive barrels as someday, bit of a blast from the past, has actually rushed Frozen Mallet looking for just trying to track and slow down Smeb in a long lane.
Yeah, that's a very different build than we've seen from other Gnars in this season.
Now, the big factor here, I think this is a build that's hyper-related. Now, you're going to expect health stacking from Smeb. So in mini-Gnar form, if someday can just auto-attack away, and of course he will be able to slow down the fairly immobile Tahm Kench, that hyper procs, once you hit level 12, 13, get 5 points in that ability, suddenly actually has not necessarily kill pressure, but ensures that if there's ever a teleport situation, he would have built up enough Gnar bar to be in Mega Gnar, and Smeb is going to be chunked out 50 to 30% health.
Yeah, absolutely huge, and that also shows how KT wants to play this. Not really going for the team fights yet, but that's going to give Kuro more time to scale
He doesn't need that much more time.
He doesn't need it, but without the forced team fights from a more team fight build Gnar, could be quite interesting. Of course, 2 dragons already over to KT, even this early into the game, and perhaps they're looking to extend to 5 dragons. We've seen KT do that on several different occasions this season.
KT Rolster opting into outscale top lane matchups, very, very successful. In this match, in a situation where they need to apply pressure against an outscale comp. And speaking of pressure...
Oh, yeah, they're going for the Rift Herald right now. Smeb, Gray health already about 50%. And here's the TP as Sunday's going to go into Mega Gnar form. Score punched out of the fight by Gorilla. Peanut now over the wall. Here comes the E, though. Big Gnar into the wall. 3 people, and they're going to catch Prey on the back end of this fight. Prey still doing damage, though. He is going to eventually fall, and now Peanut going to come in. Nice pull here by Gorilla as the Trinted ult is dropped, but that's not going to be enough as Peanut's still alive, but he is going to get knocked down by Arrow, who takes a double to end the fight. And that is going to be an ace and a large overcommitment for the Herald. And guess who gets it anyway? It's Someday.
Someday stole it and picked up the buff as the fight was going on. Crucially, KT finally fought with their earlier power spikes, and notably, Kuro doesn't have enough barrels to actually keep this fight going. The first one misfires on them. Despite having all the gold, Kuro's doing relatively nothing, and the engage from Fly and Someday with a massive scoop is what won KT this fight.
That was absolutely brilliant. Someday just waiting for his Mega Gnar on the buff and then hopping over.
And despite the fact that Kuro is basically unharassed 2-0 gangplank, because the fight keeps moving quadrants all over this river, never is there a massive barrel combo. The fight's never on Gangplank's terms, and he's fairly irrelevant despite having all the snowball gold and picking up a couple of extra kills.
Yeah, the taunt's also a major factor on that GP. Hachani landed one at the end, which kept Arrow in the game right there, and Arrow actually finishes that fight with pretty much full HP. So 3-0-2 now. Someday still with that 100% kill participation at 4-1 and 5. Picks up a lot of gold. Oh, Gorilla, you can't deal with this.
Mallet.
The Mallet doing work. And this is actually, we saw Gorilla in the last game, boots of mobility. Well, you may not want the boots of mobility against a frozen Mallet Gnar.
He's not a swiftness boots believer as far as we can tell.
That might be a better pickup under these conditions.
Already paid gold for the distortion boot upgrade, so I guess not looking to pivot right now, despite the fact, as you mentioned, the chase power from Someday is massive. And KT, they finally got the fight. We were worried that they were going to get outscaled, but get the mid-game fight they were looking for. Need to keep them honest. Gangplank's looking for the steal.
Yeah, not going to get it. Does chunk them just a hair, but that's 3 dragons now by 20 minutes. Very fast stacking. So we're looking at 32 for a possible 5th dragon from KT, much earlier than we typically see, but of course the lane swap making that possible. That's not going to land there. True Shot Barrage misses from Prey as Fly dodges out in the mid lane.
We get a new data point, Monty, because we expected KT to use their earlier power spikes to play around mid lane. Instead, they monopolized Rift Herald and Dragon. So what does a late game team fight look like? 5 dragons against a free farm Gangplank? We're probably going to find out.
That's going to be quite interesting. KT, it's playing around the Dragons so much already this season, and they've been quite successful at it.
Do you reckon they read the patch notes, or they were just like, 5 dragons, that's the way to go?
That's a really awesome buff. We need that. Doesn't matter how long it takes.
I mean, to be fair, double everything is where that 5th stack is just insanely powerful. This should never be achieved in a normal game, but whatever we were told about Season 6 has definitely been thrown in his head.
Well, the Poke Warriors being won here at the turret by the Tigers. So they chip slowly away at the members of KT. Looks like they may just abandon the mid turret after this prolonged push. Arrow's still there, but no culling left to clear the wave. And, oh, they may just look for an engage right here. There's the Cocoon. That's not going to find a target. And meanwhile, Tigers now going to be forced to back off as the flank is threatened. Someday about to hit that Mega Gnar, but that'll cause him to back off as he was usually just having that boomerang and auto harassment to turn this around.
ROX Tigers have been really cheapening out on pink ward vision around their flanks. In general, they are not really adequately warded, at least when that 5v5 standoff was happening in mid 2 minutes ago, to force down this turret. With Na opting into the top lane, it looks like they've given up fighting for this mid lane turret, but...
I don't know, Culling's almost back up. There's the Gangplank ult dropped. That might leave them vulnerable here to an engage, and without that ability and without the mid turret, they are not willing to move forward. They know that there's a possibility that with the pink ward dropped by KT, someone could be in the topside river brush.
Everyone on the side of ROX has an open slot for a pink ward. They desperately need them. Sunday's really overextended.
Flash taunt onto Prey, there's it, straight to Cocoon, and Someday is just waiting, and Meganar try to save him with a Kindred ult. That's not going to be enough. Meanwhile, Arrow gets himself in a nice position. Nar is eaten and killed, actually, by the Tahm Kench. Achani now backs away, but the siege can still come in here from KT, and nice ult. Smeb gets caught out in the front line, and this will be another turret for KT off of a top laner for a top laner and AD carry trade.
Fly was really smart to hold the ult till they had enough damage to burst through before the CC dropped and the grey health could be popped. Tahm Kench's tankiness is conditional on not being under a CC effect. It's a really nice push after an aggressive rotation from KT. And now the mid game is starting to be observed. That's what they needed to do, and they're doing it. And 2 team fights in a row. Kuro has been largely irrelevant. Now the bounce was really nicely stopped by Smeb, but it's all about, again, another big Gnar ultimate. We haven't seen many of these from the Gnar players, but the Gnar play from Sunday has been on point.
Yeah, absolutely. Arrow 2 just untouched in this choke point. Sure, they get the kill, but the follow-up crowd control. Get the taunt onto Smeb, and then the Cocoon straight as he walks into the brush.
Look, grey health, massive. Was actually his whole health bar could have been popped for grey health, but CC at the right time. Good communication between the KT members. This is more what we expected from KT. Sets up potentially a mouth-watering game 3, but again, 2 team fights, 2 misfires from a Gangplank perspective. We always have seen consistently since post-Gangplank rework, 1 barrel combo can win a game.
Yeah, force somebody off one of those objectives, chunk them out, take the Baron in return, get that kill. Gorilla eats a ton of damage and isn't going to have to use Unbreakable Will. Does hold off on pulling the trigger on his ultimate.
Smeb with teleport up, with ult up, isn't opting into the empty lane with Someday, which might tell us a bit about how effective this Frozen Mallet build has proven to be.
Yeah, it's a bit of extra damage too from the Sterix Gauge. So who's going to stop him right now? Kuro can't with his lack of TP as we speak. So we'll be Tahm Kench, Smeb merely falling back to the tier 2 turret.
Sweeper actually spotted out Gangplank. Recalling, but KT going really tricky here with a 2-man Baron attempt. There's no information to ROX. This is almost a polar opposite of the last game. Oh, spotted out.
Yeah, Score nearly died. There's the GP ultimate. Not going to be enough to secure it. Score has his finger on the smite. Hits it, and they'll get out. So a lot used right there. 2 ultimates from ROX, who correctly suspect where KT Rolster is on the map, but it's not enough to stop the Baron going down. So KT, this game taking that Baron, 30 seconds until Dragon number 4. This is looking very good for KT.
This is the cleanest objective play we've seen this season. Monopolize the early Dragons to even set that up as a win condition at a very early time in the game. Rift Herald barring 1 monopolized, winning in turrets as well. It's PvE performance, A+ from KT.
Yeah, and you said it before, but the armor is going to be incredibly effective against the ROX Tigers in this game. We see that, of course, Someday now is moving into an armor-heavy build with the Randuin's Omen. Already the Zonya's done on the fly, and without relevant magic damage, sure, Gangplank's strong, but the itemization is this efficient is a bit of a worrying sign here for the Tigers.
Even just health as a stat helps against the Gangplank. Of course, ignores 40% of regular armor. Basically has old Last Whisper.
What was like freaking out there on the edge of the circle as you see Arrow just poking his face in.
ROX have to play so far away from these waves. Someday's bringing up a Baron buffed minion wave of his own. Smeb doesn't have much wave clear, so not much he can do in this situation either.
Yeah, just has to spit some minions right back at the wave. Make as much of an attempt as he can. Someday about to hit that Mega Gnar. So he's not going to be able to prolong this push on this wave. Doesn't want to walk into melee auto range if he can avoid it. Hachani takes a barrel over the wall, but the siege will continue. Nothing done yet by the Tigers to break it.
One barrel there, 600 damage, no more to fly, so still able to keep pushing. Only Kuro has the gold on this team. Everyone else is way behind their lane opponent. It's kind of showing.
Oh, Smeb, huge amounts of damage as he walks forward just to clear. Has to go back to the fountain now, but there's no way for Someday to work with.
You could see that Smeb was walking up to allow time for Peanut to walk around, but in the action of walking up, took basically 3/4 of his life and had to back away. So much pressure coming on from Someday.
Yeah, still gets there, back for the next wave with full HP, but Someday here takes a big chunk of damage and doesn't quite finish off the top inhibitor turret.
But the moment he gets chunked out, smartly KT back as a 4-man unit. They're not looking to fight on even or uneven terms. And irregardless of that, they're playing around Someday. Just smart to see. And, you know, we think always about the combat stats that 5th Dragon provides. Just think about that same split pushing matchup with, 16% extra damage to turrets. Those turrets will explode.
Not to mention just the poke damage from the true burn that you get. It's a lot easier to force people back into fountain so you have more quality alone time with your turret.
Alone time with turrets. Cornerstone of a one League of Legends game.
It's very true. It's how you crack the base.
Indeed. We'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there. Well, KT, I think, smart to disengage. They've only got about 3 minutes until the next dragon spawn, so...
They're dictating every part of this game. They're pushing to the enemy turrets. They've monopolized Dragon and close to that on Baron and Rift Herald. Every fight this game, will, from here on, will just be ROX opting into uneven vision, poor terrain. They just have so few options apart from just responding to whatever KT decides is their safest course to victory and closing out this game and extending it to a second, third game series.
It's really shocking to me how good KT is at Dragon Control. It was a hallmark of SK Telecom's play last year. But when you think about that in this early part of the season, if they get Dragon number 5 here, I think they will have gotten it in 3 out of their total 6 games, if not 4 out of their total 6 games. And that is a very high 5th Dragon rate.
It's definitely the approach they've taken. That is their zero-sum way of winning League of Legends games in the 2016 season, has been to go for the late game, which, again, atypical of so many other teams. A score might be caught.
Has to jump up right there. Does have Peanut isolated, but Someday on his own. He's very tanky. Fly has to ult himself to get out of that Smeb. Again, tied up with the taunt. Someday now on the backside. They have to use the Kindred ult just to keep people alive. Another great ultimate and a huge taunt and stun from Hachani. And Someday is just going to absolutely wreck the ROX Tigers. What a good answer to that Kindred ult. Incoming quadra kill from Arrow. Doesn't get the penta, unfortunately. But a quadra will be good enough as they push into the enemy base.
Monte Cristo, Arrow completely beast mode of that fight. He literally did the thing in solo queue you're told not to do. He skipped past all the tanks, 1v1'd Prey, killed him in the backline, and then pivoted when Someday pulled off that big engage and cleaned up the fight.
Yeah, they were really scared of Someday, though. Everyone on the retreat using the Kindred ult just to try and survive. He is so fed.
Just think of AD carry play in previous seasons. Stay back, use your attack speed, armor penetration, and AD to kill the safe targets. It's season 2016. Everything is different. So after score comes down, just watch how Arrow plays this fight. He knows his prey's on the backline, sees that Smeb's tied up, and just goes around that and assassinates Prey, despite the fact that there's another side of the fight.
Watch Hachani right here, too. Double taunt already into the stun that was set up by Someday. Just great team fighting from KT.
KT's team fighting is what Jat highlighted in one of his videos, how smart they play team fights. That was a different type of team fight than I've seen, but executed with communication, everyone firing on all cylinders. That's KT playing at their best.
And they're justifying that early Lucian pickup here. It has been their priority, and Arrow has done well on it the majority of the games this season. It's a player that hasn't been the strongest AD carry in Korea, but on this pick and in this meta, he is looking very strong.
The narrative about the KOO Tigers at Worlds was they were the best late-game team fighters in the world, but that was apologies to KT Rolster. They were always neck and neck with the Coup Tigers during the champion season, and just that little bit ahead, at least in this game in particular.
Yeah, now Someday resuming the split push. That turret has regained some health, but it's still going to be pretty low. Thornmail also picked up by Sunday right now, and it is going to be very low, in fact. It'll take about 3 autos for Someday to kill us. 4, excuse me.
Smeb realizes that any sort of split push war is not in the advantage of the ROX Tigers. They need to be grouped as 5 to instantly collapse on whichever objective they want to go for. They're not going to try and pick up a denying dragon. They're going to look to fight a Baron. They're going to lose at minimum an inhibitor.
Yeah, KT has to pull back as Smeb comes in with that Abyssal Voyage. Lots of poke. Still going to come through. Gorilla starts tanking up the Baron. There's the GP ult drop. Can they burn down the Baron and turn this around? There's the Baron secured by Prey. Now they have to turn this fight, but there is a giant Someday who nails Peanut to the wall. Score now fighting inside the ultimate. ROX Tiger's going to take the first kill of this team fight. And can they turn this around? They get 4. Only Someday left up. He has to hop over the wall right now. He's going to get away, looks like, just barely, but ROX and Gorilla turn that fight. Gorilla walks into the pit to keep tanking. They lose an inhibitor, but they get 4 for 1 and the Baron.
The decision to stay grouped and not just have Smeb watch himself lose the turret is vindicated. They win the fight around Baron. That's off the menu. They're going to pick up their first dragon. 6% stats at 33 minutes are massive, and suddenly they get 6 minutes to push out their waves, control the game, and potentially fight the next fight on even terms as we see this replay.
Yeah, Arrow gets chunked at the start of the fight. Not going to be very helpful, but the zone here, so good from the GP ult.
Watch Gorilla now score at the very last second. Can't pick up the steal. It's a big initiation, but Peanut doesn't die, crucially.
And the biggest part is Lysandra did not use her ult. Came in with the E and then used the W for the crowd control. Got bounced by Gorilla and bursted. So pretty big misplay there from the Lysandra. And that is going to be the ROX Tigers making at least a statement, and if not a comeback into this game.
I mean, that point, that split-second CC from... You have to imagine Gorilla stopped both Zhonya's and ult from being channeled, died instantly, won them the fight.
Huge, absolutely enormous. So Gorilla once again coming up with a play that...
Smeb's very overextended.
Yes, he is. Going to deal some damage to Score. Now they're going to TP in with Kuro. Fly is here, and they're actually going to get a kill. There's the True Shot Barrage coming on through. Fly has the Shen ultimate on him, but there are 2 kills as Arrow adds a little bit of insult to injury with his arrival in that top side. They lose Score, but that is a worthy trade for both solo laners. No Cannon Barrage now available to help save this base as KT walks forward.
They're walking forward. Is there enough wave clear on the side of the ROX Tigers? How much is KT willing to commit? They have that 2-member advantage.
Why not commit at this stage? You have a TP up 2. There are no objectives to be taken. You have enough turrets left that even if they ace you, they can't really win the game.
Well, KT decide to much slower.
I think you just go for it right there. Why not?
Well, the death time is now at 15 seconds. Did not want to commit to the teleport on Fly. We have to expect them to make some sort of big split push play, but Smeb still has his teleport available, so not really much gotten from holding on to that cooldown.
That's a curious one. Very conservative from KT. Like I said, even in the worst case scenario where everybody dies and they don't give up kills, still 20-second death timers on the Tigers, so you're going to get that back. No imminent. Oh, they're going to catch him someday. Still here, turns around, gets a stun, pops over the wall. No harm done, really, besides a delayed recall. Like I was saying, you go in there, okay, you all die. Well, 20 seconds still left. You have 30 seconds where all 5 members of the Tigers are up. No imminent Baron, no imminent Dragon, tons of turrets still. No way for them to close out the game, so you might as well try and end it right there.
Now, the only reason that I might give them the benefit of the doubt is that because they have so many win conditions banked between 5th Dragon and Baron, they thought better safe than sorry, but I agree, there's a level of safety that's just a misplay. It's just too conservative, so I think that was just one hair's breadth too conservative from KT.
They find themselves in a situation getting chunked out by some GP barrels. Someday about to hit Meganar, but he's at 50% HP. Smeb doing some damage. Hachani walking forward. Arrow takes a chunk. True Shot Barrage not going to hit. Nice pull there but he is going to get tied up by the Ring of Frost. Gorilla now, the next target, GP ult falls onto Arrow. Arrow has to reposition. Ajani's going to die right here. Can they kill Gorilla in return? The answer is yes. Arrow now on top of Prey, has to back out, flashes into the back line, but they're going to live. Fly now, and Score still trying to work with his Someday, kiting Kuro, but he gets hit by a parlay. Fly still alive, but Prey is there with Smeb to take him out. Only Score left up as the defense from the ROX Tigers holds. 2 members remaining, but they lose a Nexus turret.
It holds, but as you can see, barely holds. Kuro on your screen did a lot of work, but the big story there, Arrow tried the heroics again, used his E aggressively to get on to Prey, but the trade damage, that time the call was clear to attack him as he came in. He was taken down during the fight, and that was the big difference from the last massive team fight.
Yeah, they went in after they chunked out Peanut. Fly with a nice zoning ultimate. Someday punts 2 back.
You see Arrow with the Brock there trying to get in, but he takes so much damage, just dies to the Tahm Kench AoE overall, and Smeb, he's the one providing the zones that allow Prey to do consistent chip damage in the backline.
And Smeb really was the biggest part of that team fight because he was able to work Someday down to about 50% HP at the start of that, and then there wasn't really any damage taken by him because he's playing Tahm Kench.
It's true, and man, this game is so close. It feels like KT should have found just an unassailable win condition. Look, they broke the base. That's what you're normally looking for teams to do in 2 different ways. But specifically losing out on both Baron and Dragon has meant this game is suddenly very much on the knife's edge.
It is, and particularly when we consider that both inhibitors are now up, so no more super minion threat as this Dragon spawns. KT still on the cusp of a 5th Dragon stack, but it may be traded for a Baron if the Tigers can delay. Last time we actually saw KT prioritizing it seemingly the Baron over the 5th Dragon, which is an interesting call.
Feels like 5th Dragon is providing so much more. Obviously very similar in the split push sense, but the team fight, I think from the 5th Dragon is what gives it a little bit more of an edge. ROX Tigers going to get some of the standing gold. They only have 2 turrets almost 40 minutes in. So that global gold helps. They're only 7,000 behind. And again, with Gangplank banking so much, one team fight could turn the game.
Someday here, poked out. The start of the fight, Fly ready for a TP flank. They have good wards on the edge, so they're going to fight the Tigers at the Dragon. Kuro there, loaded up with a barrel, gets a nice first proc, and here we go. The TP's coming into the backline. Someday on the flank. He's not Meganar. Fly. He's going to use his claw to get into this fight. No, he doesn't take it on the retreat. Meanwhile, Kindred ult drops. Someday going to punt 2 into the wall. Gorilla has his ultimate, uses it right now. Kuro in the front line. Is Kuro going to die? The answer is yes, but that's a 1-for-2 trade for KT. They lost Peanut, they lost Kuro, but they still have 4 members up. Achani low. Arrow needs to get some HP, but Smeb is just so damn tanky. Someday here in Mininar is going to get eaten and pushed back in. Someday is going to die as Prey comes over the wall with the arcade shift. Achani, the next victim of Prey, but there is Score on top of him. Arrow has to work through Smeb right now. Score with a Zhonya's Hourglass is going to be the next one to die, as Smeb has actually been getting most of the kills in these fights. Dash forward. Arrow wants the finisher, and there's the shield. Tongue Lash not going to hit.
Oh, he got it!
He turns around on the bush face check. Smeb on the highest damage Tahm Kench anyone has ever seen, and he finishes the ace. Holy cow.
That health scaling, just the Q auto attack exploded Arrow. That was an insane fight. Fly tried to find the big initiation. Couldn't quite find it. You notice he didn't take the initiation. Gorilla's on zoning duty. The big head scratcher for me is Kuro. He's fighting 1v3 in the backline.
He was taunted.
He was taunted. But his first move was forward. He got taunted. That just exemplified it. But fighting away from specifically his tanks and disengages. Arrow's just lifestealing this whole time on the back line. But how this fight ends is just insane.
Yeah, Someday here just trying to get the auto harass, but he's not going to be Mega anytime soon.
Amusing. Arrow has to periodically stop auto attacking because of the Thorn Mail damage coming out from Smeb. Prey is able to do Ezreal things we're seeing in the picture-in-picture. The Baron attempt by the ROX Tigers. Smeb's heroics in this fight. First eating and killing score, but this last outplay was insane. Man, the Baron is pretty important too. It's falling super low. It is picked up.
Tigers
by the
get
ROX
both
Tigers.
the Dragon and the Baron. Let's take a look at this. So Q misses, Arrow dashes forward.
The world's biggest auto attack from Smeb. There was definitely a proc from Deadman's play in there as well. Crazy damage, and they pick up the Baron as well. This defense is still on.
It is. So the Tigers looking to make that comeback. We saw a 2-inhib successful comeback from Samsung yesterday against Longzhu. Tigers now in that position. They have taken away the 5th Dragon twice and the Baron to keep themselves in this game.
Just feels like Fly is totally irrelevant this game. Doesn't have a Void Staff among his 6 items. Okay, one of those items, a Pink Ward slot. The Burst has certainly been outscaled by the impressively tanky builds, the likes of the ultimate coming through from Gorilla. Of course, Kuro has the oranges and Peanut has his ult. Specifically, Fly has not managed to make much traction in the last few fights. And ROX Tigers ever so slightly edging ahead in the last few.
Well, it's just so interesting to score with the Zhonya's Hourglass this game, opting for some more magic damage because they really need it. And here we go, Someday with the initiation. They find Peanut. Peanut in the Kindred ult. He's going to die. 2 members caught up. Prey is in the front line. Peanut's still alive, but everyone collapsing. Got a double kill for Someday. Gorilla here now in the middle of the team fight, and they're going to chase down Smeb eventually. Gorilla turned on by Hachani and Fly. He is going to die. Smeb now stunned twice. Boulder toss. He's not going to live much longer. He wants to take out Arrow, but Arrow just going to back off, and that should be it. Gorilla, though, is actually going to get a kill onto Fly. Where did Hachani go in all of that? I guess he ulted out.
Arrow with the stylish culling there. He knows this game is over. Prey died in the front line. Smeb wasn't even Groot in that fight. For once, ROX's team fight positioning completely lets them down, and we're going to a 3rd game.
What a thrilling final game. Gorilla gets taunted. No more ultimate. So KT wins the last team fight. Someday ends up with a 30 out of 32 kill participation in a very dominant Gnar game. But what a fun one, both Smeb and Someday with some great outplay moments.
And Fly, I was dogging him, and then the last fight got the flank around the back, caught up Prey and Kuro in the middle of the fight. They cleaned them both up. Smeb showed